everybody. Welcome back to What'd He Say? The podcast where we try to figure out what Danny's saying because we want to know what the Lord has and is saying. If you want to check out the sermons, which you should, they're great. There, you can go to our website, whfamily.org. There's a link in the corner to our YouTube page, which has them all on there. This time we get to talk about the sermons from November 10th and November 17th. They're sermon number 7 and 8 in the Called to Jesus series. They're fantastic. Check them out. We're going to discuss them, see what we heard, see if we heard the same things or different things. Can't be right, can't be wrong. It's just fun to talk about it together and dig in and try to learn and make sure we utilize them fully. So, Tara, November 10th, 100 is the title. What'd you hear?
All right. So my first point, well, one is just that Danny described the centurion as having a faith that impressed Jesus. And like that immediately made my ears perk up. Like that wasn't even really a point Danny was making. It was more of like a hook, but I was like, that is such a good, like
You were
a
hooked.
faith that impressed Jesus. Um, So I'm immediately like, well, let's talk. Let's talk about it. What do we got? And he made this point about the centurion flipped the script, which has been an ongoing theme for us this year of what we might think of as a strong faith, because he called Jesus to him instead of going to Jesus. And it just made me realize that one, in general, the concept of flipping the script hit different with that phrasing than it had before. Because if we are struggling and we're like in a place where we're struggling, like either in life or in our faith, like what have we taken for granted is like the right way to be a Christian that we maybe need to flip the script on? Like, where have we put our faith in too small of a box and now we need to open it up? And, um, So that was one thing I took out of that. And then, of course, that not only can we, and this was a big part of Danny's point with this regard, not only can we call Jesus to us, we should be. And he used as part of motivation for that the quote from the song In Christ Alone, for we are his and he is ours. And that just happens to be one of my absolute favorite songs. And one of my favorite lines in that is, here in the love of Christ I stand. And I never once really thought about how that is one of those kind of like hope based declarations, and that deep Christian hope that's not like I'm wishing on a star hope. It's that like this is bought and paid for, and I'm waiting for a thing I know is inevitable. When
Mm-hmm.
you say like, here in the love of Christ I stand, like that is a faith-based declaration of calling Jesus to me here where I'm standing. And so I just thought that was a really cool point.
Yeah, it is cool. And we heard the same thing. And somehow you got my first and second points in there, but that's okay. I'll say it
Oh
anyway. No, but it was good. At the very beginning of the sermon, he
I don't think
said,
that's ever happened before.
I know, right? In the very beginning, he said that true love is a willingness to sacrifice, and that we need to remember that goes both ways, not just God loving me, which is important, but us writing that blank check to God and loving him, saying, whatever you need, whatever, I'm yours. And that's sort of the more negative way to say it, to be like, we should be doing this. But then later he says the positive version, which is what you said, which is we can call on Jesus and expect him to respond because he has given himself to us the way we are supposed to give ourselves to him. So yeah, we
Yeah.
can we can call on him and expect him to be there, which I'll bring up slightly differently in my second point. But what did you hear also?
um yeah, I kind of love that blank check line too. I thought that was pretty. Um my second point was, and I can't really remember what Danny said that brought me here. Um I like he was talking about the flipping the scripts, and he didn't he like the centurion's expectations. And I can't really remember what he said that made me go here, but like he said the centurion says, Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. And that is not, and that is why I didn't even consider myself worthy to come to you. And then, of course, he says, I tell this one, go, and he goes, and he comes, and do this, and he does it. And it like clicked that like this man had 100% full expectation that Jesus could and would heal his servant. Also 100% fully did not expect and was a little horrified to find out that Jesus was going to show up in person. Like, that is an impressive faith. Like, he was like, it is a life or death situation for someone he deeply cares about. And he's still like, whoa, 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 whoa. I didn't think you were going to like show up here. That's what, no, just heal him from wherever you are. That's fine. Like, that's a wild faith. And it's that same like flip script kind of thing where you would be like, don't tell Jesus what to do. If he wants to show up at your house, he's going to show up at your house. But it had this kind of reverence Danny's talked about before for like not taking, fully believing in God's power, but also not taking it for granted. This like, whoa, you don't need to ship, like, just wherever you are, just say the poofy words and he'll be here. Like, we're good. You don't come here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what that really made me realize was like he probably expected, given his life experience, one of Jesus's followers to show up. And so for us, that might look like how often are we waiting around for like a miracle or a sign or something we really identify as God to intervene? And what we should be looking at is other people in our lives who are trying to help us. Because why would we expect that Jesus was showing up in person, which he can do and he does do, but like probably a person's going to show up with the full force of God's power behind them to help us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Good. All of those. I like that very much. So many metaphors I've heard were popping in my head, and he said them really well. Um, yeah. Oh man, all of that ties in so well. So I'll just say mine, and then I'll let you. Maybe I'll say the tie-ins, or maybe it won't. But um, so he says. So Danny said that. Um, this is my paraphrase of what he said. He said, "Love refuses to be separated because of the world's classifications, i.e., race, economy, political power, gender, health, beauty. Love refuses to acknowledge that that's a separation because it really, that's not what separates us." Um, and he also said that God is so far above us that he can teach us through anything or anyone, but do we give him the room to do that? Which is what you said and this point together. It can be preconceived notions of how God's going to function that can do that, that limit us from seeing, accessing, asking, walking fully in what he's doing. And also just, incorrect assessments of humans around us and whether he'll use them and whether they can teach us or whether we're above them and whether all that stuff. Which is, yeah, really, really cool point. That's an excellent point because we can be too wise, like, or view ourselves as too wise, or we can elevate ourselves above God's teaching anytime. And this, from what you said, and this point made me think there's that joke that there's a guy in a flood, he's on the roof and he's praying, God save me. And a canoe goes by and he goes, no, God's gonna save me. And then two other things come and then he dies in the flood and God's like, hey, or he's like, hey, God, I thought you were going to save me. He's like, I sent you a canoe and a helicopter. Yeah. So yeah, we need to see the canoes.
What do you want from me?
God is in our lives. And that ties really nicely into one of the points I have for the next sermon. It's so exciting.
That's so funny too, because in the context of this story now, okay, you see the centurion expecting a canoe,
Yeah.
and Jesus shows up and he's like,
Yeah.
whoa,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
So
expecting
that's
like a
it.
canoe.
Yeah, and I thought your canoe would totally get the job done. How
I
much more
did
that you're
not
here?
need you here in
Sorry I
person. The
bothered you.
canoe will be
Yeah.
fine. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, and that attitude makes me think of the story. I've heard it in a couple sermons, I think from Tim Keller. Apparently, I don't remember if this is supposed to be historically accurate or just myth, but some emperor somewhere, some king, someone with power, one of
Mhm.
is, having court or whatever, and one of his main guys comes up and says, "Hey, my daughter's getting married. Can I have money for the wedding?" And he goes, "Yeah, of course. How much do you need?" And he asks for an insane amount of money. And all the other people watching are like, "Oh no, he's going to be in trouble. You can't ask for that much money." Oh no. But then the emperor ends up being like feeling honored by the huge request because it's faith
Oh,
that he has that much money and that he is that generous and that he can afford it. So he like took it as, so it's that weird.
a sign of respect.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's kind of that, it's that same level of I totally believe that you can do this, but in this fake story or myth or real story, this person was like ex- show up for me. Whereas the
Yeah.
centurion has that same level of, well, you can totally accomplish this to the point where you don't even need to show up. Like
Yeah.
you can just do it. Like afterthought. This is not hard for you.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Very, yeah. I don't walk around. I feel like I'm very faithful, but I also don't walk around with that level of he can do anything. Let's get this done.
Yeah.
How am I participating in this? So, yeah. All right. Well, okay. So before we move on, as Tara referenced, thank you. The story was the faith as a centurion. You find it in Luke 7, verses 1 through 10. So I think there's a couple. There might be one more. Is this the only soldier story where the soldier asks Jesus for something? Is there more than one? This is it, right? This is the famous one, anyway. If there's another one, I should probably know, but that's
This
it.
is for
Okay.
sure the one I know best.
Yeah,
I
there
know
we go.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. That brings us to November 17th, which is the eighth in the Call to Jesus series. And it was titled, Do You See What I See? I'll tell you at the front end, not the back end, not the scripture reading. And where you find the story is John chapter 9, verses 1 through 12. And it's a story of a man born blind that Jesus heals and the people, specifically the Jewish people's reaction to that. So, what did you hear?
Well, I guess kind of something that's interesting is I feel like your last point covers both of my 2 points for this one. So we kind of done that, but
Payback.
it's a totally different sermon, so we'll do our best to still have a point. So Danny shared that quote, let us be let us then be less inquisitive and more practical. And that was in reference to when you're given the opportunity to help someone and like kind of generically less judgmental and more what can I do to help. But I just really liked the phrasing because it saying like don't judge people, like that implies a certain level of judgment in and of itself, that you are judging people and really maybe you just were looking for info, but like
Mhm,
less
mhm.
inquisitive and more practical, that's very soft and just an accurate description. Like you don't need to know, just do the helping thing. And I just really loved that because every time I've read this story and they say the like who sent this man or his parents, I'm always like, oh, you goobers, that's not how that works. And I feel like a big part of Danny's point in this sermon was that like we do that. Like we judge the Pharisees like, what kind of question is that? But what we really should be confused by when they say that is, who cares? Like, who cares who sinned if it was him or his parents? And who even like really cares what their sin was? Like, can you heal him? Cool, do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've
Yeah.
never thought that ever when reading this. I've just been like, silly Pharisees. Good job, Jesus. Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so easy sitting there in Sunday school or church, like these Pharisees are sinners. I would never. So easy. It's just a trap, and those you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was good. That was good. That was good. Okay. Um. Yeah. Okay. For all your points, you're making me think of other things, but I'll stick. I chose points. I'm gonna say them. Okay. Danny said, God is not the God of the comfortable, but he is the God of comfort and hope, which sounds terrifying. That sounds like if you're at the beginning of a journey and someone's like, this is going to be grueling, but you're tough. Like you're like, well,
Am
okay.
I though? Why are we doing this?
Okay, but he also said that faith is behaving as though all things will be made right in the end. And so I that's what it means for God to be the God of comfort and hope. It means while we're in our issues, while we're now, there is comfort and he is here with us and he's in it with us. But there's also hope, which is
Yeah.
which is the fact that it will all be made right. So I like that point. Good point. Good point. Good point. Tim Keller tells a story which, like, if anyone else told it, it'd be like stupid, but he tells it really well. Like, how he had a dream where his family died, and then he woke up from the dream and his family was alive, and he was like actively joyed by the fact that his family was alive. Whereas when he went to bed, like it was, he wasn't in, he was
Oh,
taking it for granted. And he says that what we're going through now will be like that for eternity. Like eternity will be better, sweeter for this having been. Not that it can only be, you know what I mean? Like something like that. That's what he says. And I think that's what Danny and
I
people mean when
never
they
thought of
say
that before.
that behaving as though all things will be made right in the end. And God's
Yeah,
version of peace and God's version of right is never just like, oh, okay, I see that it's an experience, it's a fullness, it's multifaceted. So that.
that's a good point. Yeah, I won't be like, oh, okay, I get it. It will be so true that it will be
Yeah.
apparent.
Yeah, it
Like
won't be like
waking up from a
factually correct.
nightmare and realizing,
Yeah.
like, it wasn't real. Okay.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
That is good. That's very good. I love that. And I relate. Uh I have really rough nightmares. So that
Oh
hits
wow.
me hard.
Well, there you go.
That's one of my things. Okay. My point two, um, is that I have to learn Greek. Not really, but like I just so many times that Danny does, I love when he takes us through like what the words mean and like it could be translated this way. And I just think he does a really good point of being like, just from a linguistic perspective, these are both valid translations, but then uses his extra Bible knowledge and experience to be like, but because XYZ thing, I think this one's more accurate, probably. And like on this one, he brings up that it's in the NIV, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. And then Danny was like, that makes it sound like God did this to him on purpose so that we could have this
Yeah.
Bible episode. And that's always how I took that. And I didn't love it. I kind of chalked it up as one of those like God things I don't get. And like, I don't know how it works. Maybe this man, before he was put on this earth, was like, if you need to make me suffer in some way, like maybe he agreed to it. I don't know. I don't know how it works. But I didn't love it. And then Danny gives us this other translation of, but so that the work of God might be displayed in his life, we must do the work of him who sent me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, once he said that, I felt like, and I kind of felt like this was his point too, that like if you know the Bible, those are both reasonable translations. And from what Danny said, both like accurate translations. But I feel like if you really know God's character the way we are supposed to, you would have known that was the message even in the other translation. Like
Yeah.
you would have read it written the way it's written in the NIV and still known that's what it meant.
Yeah.
And so it really hit me that like, oh, duh, duh, that's what that's
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. I like that too.
I never
Yeah.
read it that way, but even in the other translation, you could perceive that that's what was meant by that. And I just didn't.
Yeah. That's a hard thing to understand when you start to know God, you're like, okay, he's outside of time, which means he knows what you're going to do. Does that mean he's causing what you're going to do? And that can be a weird relationship. Like that tension happens in the Exodus story when he said God hardens Pharaoh's heart. I'm like, well, that's not fair. I don't want to be that character, but that's not necessarily what that means for someone who's outside of time. Like if you know that what you need to do is going to harden their heart, you can say it. All right, well, harden their heart. You know what I mean? So it's that
Yeah.
tension. What does that mean? And that no, that was a good point here because I've never liked that particular line either. I'm like, what? And I've also heard, well, because I don't want to be an author. No.
Yeah, yeah,
And if
yeah.
I am, can I be one of joy? Like, come on.
There's
But
some
again,
really good joy lessons I will
yeah,
participate in.
I will super be that example. Sign me up. Yeah, so that no, that's an excellent point. But I've heard it said that God doesn't cause horribleness, but he will not waste it either,
Yeah.
which is kind of
Yeah.
what that other translation points out. It's like, well, okay, this happened, but the emphasis isn't on the thing that happened, it's on the what God's gonna do about it. And
Right.
we're gonna participate in that. So yeah.
And Danny hit some really, this was just one of them that happened to strike me, but like he said the like, why does bad things happen to good people? That's a very hard question. And that's something we've
Yeah.
talked about before. Um, that he was like, we're not going to solve in this sermon. But then he really kind of did. Like, he didn't really write because we don't know exactly everything that's going on, but like, he made some really strong, very comforting points that I feel like
Yeah.
if that's something you're struggling with and you're watching this, watch that sermon because like he kind of did address
Yeah.
that very, very well.
Well, and this is not my point too, but one of the things I also liked about the sermon was the cultural context he added. I had
Yes.
no idea about the festival. I had no idea about the light show, and it really like makes as I biblically understand why God and Jesus would choose the metaphor of light to represent himself in the world. I get that, but I didn't know how directly and richly it was tied to anything they were already doing and how light already mattered to them so much. And I knew about the pillar of fire, but I didn't know that this was a thing that they did. And I didn't, I never put myself in I've been to church camp and there is like a fervor that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just I never put that on the story ever. So that was really good too. So if you want it to come alive a little bit and for these characters to turn into people and for you to understand them a
Real
little bit,
people you
was
can
a good
identify with.
otherwise it's like why are they saying that nobody would ever this is weird like you said why would you ask that question but it's a valid question okay
Yeah.
anyway so my point too was Danny said I don't think this is a quote I think it's a paraphrase but anyway he said we cannot physically heal people we don't have that power I mean God can do that through us if he wants to but we can't physically heal people but there is a healing more eternal than the physical that the Lord does want us to actively participate in um, and then, so he said that midish sermon. And then at the end, he said, we are called to see the real Jesus and to pass him on to the world so that he can bring peace and fullness. And that's the same thing. So, so yeah, I mean, that's one of the comforting things about suffering is that the Lord is going about trying to bring true and lasting healing to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's
Mm-hmm.
about. And that's what we're supposed to be about too. And it's not our power we're relying on because we can't do that second kind of healing either.
Either. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't physically heal, but we can't do this other kind of healing either. All we can be are people who said it. What? This is awesome. Look what happened. Do you,
Yeah.
huh? Huh? That's what we're supposed to do. And we're
And
supposed to do
like
it like
just
you said, without, it doesn't matter why. It doesn't
yeah.
matter what they got going on. It doesn't matter what put them in that position because there's a healing for it. There's freedom from it. And let's look over here at the dude who can do that.
Yeah. And just show up for it. And then you can't do the literal healing anyway. So
Yeah.
like let that go. Just show up.
Yeah.
It makes it more accessible to us too, even that's how it works. I just gotta be there.
Well, yeah,
And
because like you said earlier, God's going to send a person probably, right? That's how he works. He works through his church, through the body. So if we won't show up for people, That's us being like, God, I'm not going to go represent you today. I'm not on your mission today.
I'm not your
I'm not
canoe.
doing that. Yeah, right. I'm too good to be a canoe. I will only be, yeah,
A
exactly.
helicopter.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, and I think shoot, I had a thing and it just got away from me now that I wanted to say about what Danny said. You
Okay.
said the thing. Oh, um, that
You
that
did.
was another point Danny made about the that he goes to him and he heals him physically
Yeah.
and then comes back to him at
Yeah.
the end of the story, spiritually healing him.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
I
Like
feel
you've
like
been
this is the most
alienated. You
literal
feel,
example of that. That like
yeah.
we help people on this earth and this life with their physical needs, one just out of love,
Yeah.
but also because that is the gateway
Yeah.
to spiritual healing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Right. Care of a person in the way they can immediately experience it leads them to be able to see care of them in the ultimate way. Yeah. Which is what Jesus does here. He's like, I got this. This is fixed. Oh, when community has been a problem, you're in community with the only one it matters to be in community with. You
mhm.
have community and blah blah. Yeah, very good, very good. Oh, they were good. I enjoyed these sermons. You should go check them out. whfamily.org will get you to our YouTube page where the whole series is there. Check them out if you haven't seen it. Yeah, so will you, Tara, close us out in prayer?
Yes.
Okay.
Um, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth and in me as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, our canoe, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation of this world, this life, of the evil one, but yeah, deliver us from the evil one. Nevertheless, not our will, which is entirely insufficient and weak, but your will, which is more than enough and a beautiful gift. Amen.
Yes, good. Amen. All right, thanks everybody. See you next time. Bye.